Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC Vegas 100. There's been 100 Apex events. Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates, and my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Apex for the 100th time. You got the absolute stud prospect or rising contender. I mean, he's 20-6, so he ain't exactly, some 7-0 prospect. This guy Prates, he's the kind of guy, as Dana would say, we're going to put him in the mix right away. And then Magny is the vet of vets. I mean, this guy's got the most wins in welterweight history, the longest reach in welterweight history, and he's been known to set back upcoming prospects. So there's a lot to talk about. And without further ado, my friends, let's get down to business. So in this main event, welterweight division, we got Neil Magny, who's 29-12, taking on Carlos Prates, who's 20-6. And currently they got it Carlos Prates minus 750. The comeback on Neil Magny is plus 550. So I think most of us are picking Carlos Prates, but it's unfortunate that there's not really any value on this line at minus 750. What am I supposed to do with it? Like, how much value can that add to a parlay? But the thing people don't understand about parlays is that they think, well, I'm not actually betting Carlos Prates at minus 750 if I parlay him with this guy. Now I'm betting Carlos Prates at minus 180. I got news for you, son. You're still betting him at minus 750. So let's already go ahead and get rid of that bullshit narrative. But as far as how they match up, one thing that's really interesting is this is one of those spots where Neil Magny, look, he's still the taller guy, 6'3" versus 6'1", 80-inch reach for 78-inch reach, but it's not to the point of where all these other matchups where these guys just get flustered by the range of Neil Magny. And then they start fighting very uncharacteristic. You see like Li Jing Liang and Robbie Lawler, who are some of the most devastating knockout artists in the history of the welterweight division, and they're going out there trying to clinch, and then they get tired from clinching, and then they just get grinded out, and they fight so uncharacteristic and look terrible. And then there's like the Malat fight where Malat's dominating him. Malat gasses, gets pounded out. So like Magny's been doing this stuff forever, and if you're not quite ready for the vet tactics of Magny, or you come in there with the wrong kind of plan, I mean, he can take all your energy away from you and take you to the Magniverse, and from there, he can do his thing. The issue with it is Prates is not one of these smaller guys. Prates is a big welterweight, and he has the exact weapons needed to dismantle Neil Magny. What are those weapons? You guys know what they are. The calf kick. A good calf kick has always been the kind of weapon you use against a guy like Magny. Look at what Lorenz Larkin did to him. Look at what Santiago Ponzinibbio did to him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know there's more examples too. And Prates, he stays long. He takes his time. He establishes his jab. Then he mixes in those calf kicks. And the thing about it is the reason that Dana compared Carlos Prates to the great Anderson Silva. It's not just the fact that, this guy's a showstopper and, he's got 15 knockout wins on his record and all that. It's how he eases into the fight, how he kind of makes his read early on. I'm not talking about like Peter Yan style. I'm talking about Anderson Silva style. There's a difference between how Peter Yan and Anderson Silva used to fight. Yes, they'd both make their reads early, but like Peter Yan still eases into the fight every single round and slowly turns up on you. Whereas like Anderson, it'd be kind of like a half round to kind of gauge where you're at. And then it'd be like Matrix, like finishes, you know what I mean? Stuff that you haven't seen before. And that's what Carlos Prates is on, man. Carlos is the kind of guy, first round, kind of, feel you out, see where your range is at. Try to, establish a jab, a couple low kicks, whatnot. But once he finds his range and he feels comfortable and he starts letting his hands go, I mean, bodies don't, like, these guys don't just quit. Like, these guys go out stiff, unconscious, and bodies hit the floor, man. So I guess the big area of concern that people have is, well, these guys get sucked into fighting Magny in the clinch, and then they just gas themselves out doing so because they have such an issue with the range of Magny. The range of Magny is not going to be an issue here. So I think that Carlos can do his thing on the outside, but also if he wants to close the distance and get into that clinch where Magny historically has his biggest success, Carlos Prates is a Muay Thai. He's got Muay Thai tatted on his chest. That means that this guy's got that Muay Thai plum. And if anything, I think that actually this is one of the spots in the clinch where Prates is the guy that can be doing the damage to Magny, knees to the gut, Muay Thai plum, whatever the case may be, elbows. So the thing about it is determining when's this finish going to happen. You know, obviously, assuming that Magny doesn't get an upset, which I am not predicting to happen at all. When does this man get this finish? Under 2.5 is minus 215. Wow. Let's see. So Prates by KO minus 300. Obviously, you know, what are you going to do with that? Prates by sub is plus 900. Don't forget that Prates is a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's been tapping guys out for a long time. But where I would look personally, if you're a prop guy, I mean, maybe don't listen to what I'm saying because I'm a money line better. I'm a straight better, not a you know what bet. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a straight better, but for the prop guys, these round props are interesting, you know. Prates round 1 plus 200. Yeah, that's a little, you know, that's nothing to write home about. But considering the guy's a slow starter, round 3 plus 450, round 2 plus 350, round 4 plus 900. Listen, you watch that Santiago Ponzinibbio fight against Neil Magny. Magny took that ass whooping for 3 straight rounds, and in the 4th, he got face planted. So, Prates in round 4 is plus 900. But yeah, you know, I don't think it's my business to talk about stuff like that I'm not going to bet on, and I'm not going to lay this minus 750 straight. But I am going to pick Carlos Prates to come out here and put Neil Magny as another member of his highlight reel. This is going to be a 16th knockout, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be emphatic. And I think actually that Carlos Prates, I'm going to go ahead and say it now, if he performs how I think he's going to perform on Saturday night, I think that this guy's going to be the rookie of the year. Like, let's look at the other options. We got Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira, and he's been doing his thing. The incredible knockout over Sopaj. The beatdown of Ricky Simone. We also got Gian Silva. Look what he's done. The Charles Roland fight, the Drew Dober fight. But this kid, Prates, is already headlining cards, and is he in the top 15 yet? If he's not, he will be after this fight. Let's check if he's in the top 15 yet. No. Okay, look, exactly. Neil Magny is number 15. This is what we do. We usher out the old guard, bring in the new kids. Number 15 is Neil Magny. That's about to change on Tuesday. So Saturday, I think that Carlos Prates is going to come out here and knock Neil Magny out. Now, originally, the co-main event was supposed to be Miles Johns versus Cody Garbrandt, or as we like to say in Brazil, Cody Garbrandt. But Cody pulled out the fight. So, man, I've been texting with my sources back and forth, trying to be like, bro, let me know if there's a replacement so I can talk about it on the podcast. I asked my guy all the way back at 11 a.m. and here at 4:30 p.m. I still don't have an answer. So as soon as I find out who Miles Johns is fighting, I'll do a breakdown on that. But until then, we got to work with what we got. And what we got is next up in the strawweight division, we got Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She's 16-8, taking on Denise Gomes, who's 9-3 currently. They got it. Denise Gomes minus 500. The comeback on Karolina Kowalkiewicz is plus 385. So, yeah, obviously a few years ago, and maybe even now, those odds are completely off because think about it. Like, you guys know the heights that Karolina Kowalkiewicz has reached in the sport. Like, I remember when I cashed that plus 215 on Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Rose Namajunas at UFC 201 in Atlanta, Georgia. But when was that fight? That fight was in 2016. We're approaching nearly a decade since then. My girl Karolina is 29 years old, and the fact that she's still competing with these girls, and she even had a nice little 4-fight win streak. Like you love to see stuff like that, especially not just because this girl's been paying her dues forever, but because she seems like such a genuinely nice person. And at her best, man, good volume on the feet, in the clinch. She's got nasty knees. Ask Rose Namajunas about that. And she's always been decently well-rounded. It's just my girl's 39 now. And then with Denise Gomes, she's only 24. Okay. So like, this is a ridiculous age discrepancy. And with her, she kind of has that, the prototypical Jessica Andrade style, kind of short, stocky, goes out there, swings big bombs, has 6 knockout wins. She got more knockout wins than she got decision wins. You don't often see that in women's MMA. So yeah, obviously, if there's a chance to hurt Carolina's been hurt before, but like when you're talking minus 500, and we're talking about these new gloves where people aren't, where the knockdown and knockout rate has like dramatically declined. Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm gonna go with Denise. The age, the physicality, the momentum on her side, but I have zero interest in laying minus 500 on her. And next up in the bantamweight division, we got a match between Ricky Turcios, he's 12-4, taking on Bernardo Sopaj, who's 11-3. Currently, they got it. Bernardo Sopaj minus 350. The comeback on Ricky Turcios is plus 275. So Bernardo was on the wrong side of one of the knockouts of the year, and now all of a sudden he's a minus 350 favorite. Listen, I get it because Ricky Turcios has one of the ugliest styles that anyone's ever seen in all our years watching the sport. Like, do you have any explanation for that Ayman Zahabi fight? And that no disrespect to Ayman at all. Look at this kid going to the top 15 now. But I'm just saying, like, the way that Ricky performed in that fight, the way he performed in the Natividad fight, I thought he was on his way to losing that Natividad fight, but that one back take at the very end saved him. The Raul Rosas fight, listen, Raul's a stud. It was what it was. But, like, even going back to the regionals, what Mana Martinez did to him, what Boston Salmon did on Contenders, I've just never been impressed with Ricky Turcios. And I'm sure he's a nice guy. Maybe you can smoke a joint with him or something, but like, would you want to do that? He wouldn't shut the fuck up. And every other word is, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I got no issues with saying, you know what I'm saying? I'm from Atlanta, but this guy says it every other couple words. I'm like, oh my God, like, can this guy shut up already? But with Bernardo Sopaj, like, listen, the kid's a stud, man. He, on his regional scene, he did exactly what he needed to do. He got some devastating knockouts. He's really good on the mat. He's got heavy hands, heavy kicks. And you even saw it in the Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira fight. He won that first round very decisively and the first half of the second round. Now, it was 1-1 going into that third round. The fight was on short notice. No, not to discredit Lockdog, who I love Lockdog, but Lockdog noticed that his opponent was visibly slowing down, and he made him pay and then some with an emphatic flying knee knockout. Now the kid's returning, and he's got the pressure of being a minus 350 favorite. But the good news for him is that, let's look at Ricky Turcios' stats right now. Does Ricky Turcios push the kind of pace that, really gets anybody too worried? Let's see. Well, he has landed over 100 significant strikes more than once, but granted, that was in 2021 and 2017. Since then, his output has been dramatically low. It's just, you have to worry about, even if we can't stand this guy, we think he's annoying as hell, he does have some vet tactics. He has been around the block. So Pi is still coming off a devastating knockout loss. Where's his confidence at? Skill for skill and potential for potential. Yeah, I'll go Sopaj here, but I'm not interested at this price. Like, go if you go starch this guy at minus 350, hey, all respect to you, but show it to me first. Show it to me first, because Ricky, as much as I can't stand listening to him talk or watching him fight, he's still a battle-tested vet. So you still have to show him some respect. Especially when we're talking about prices like this. But I'll pick Bernardo, but let's see. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Gerald, GM3 Meerschaert. He's 37-17, taking on Reiner de Ridder, who is 17-2. Okay, I just got the text. So Miles Johns, they're trying to book him for another event. So Miles Johns is off this card. Shout out to my dog for texting me that. Y'all getting that inside info right here, right now on Half the Battle. You're welcome. But listen, man, currently they got it. Reiner de Ridder minus 285 to come back on Gerald Meerschaert. Just depends where you look, from plus 210 to plus 250. Listen, man, shout out to this kid, Reiner de Ridder, coming into the UFC, 19 pro fights under his belt. He did his thing overseas in ONE FC. He had a lot of great fights over there. And one thing you got to say about this kid, Reiner, he's a finisher, man. He truly is. 15 finishes on his record, 12 of them by submission, and he's got a nasty array of submissions on his record. The darces, the rear nakeds, the arm triangles. Most recently, well, not most recently, but a couple years ago, he hit this nasty inverted triangle choke on this one guy. But like, he hasn't fought at middleweight since 2019. Not that I think the cut is going to be an issue or anything, but just, pointing that out. He's been fighting against slower opponents, but granted, Gerald's one of the slower guys at middleweight. But I'm just saying that, it's been a long ass time since this dude has fought at middleweight. This guy's fought at heavyweight. This guy's fought at light heavyweight. So on one hand, you could look at it as, hey, he's got to be in the best shape of his life to drop to 185. But on the other hand, you can look at it as, how's he going to recover from this first cut? I'm sure he's going to make the weight fine. I mean, this guy's a true professional. And again, for a guy who's never fought in the UFC before, he really made his presence known overseas. But when you watch his last 3 fights, man, like, so he gets starched. Now, granted, it was at heavyweight and it was against an undefeated guy, but I mean, I gotta tell you what happened. I can't sugarcoat it. He got starched, but then he rematches the guy. And the fight where he got starched wasn't a big deal to me because anybody can get caught, especially at heavyweight when you're not really a heavyweight. Like, so what? So what? Big deal that he got starched. The big deal was the rematch against that guy. And the reason being was that he gassed out in a way where they literally stopped the fight because the guy couldn't get back up. I'm not talking about like between rounds, like, oh, he answered, the bell a little bit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, this guy went for his takedown attempts. They didn't work. He just sat on his knees and didn't get back up. The ref's like, come on, get back up. And he's like, Jonah Hill cut. Like he was done. And when you see guys quit like that, and yes, of course, the context of it being at heavyweight, but I've seen other guys move up and down weight classes and not pull stunts like that. So, like, do you just completely write it off because it was heavyweight? I mean, shouldn't you be the faster guy since you're the smaller guy? I'm just saying, bro. Like, people can, take things out of context or be very selective with their reasoning or write this off because of, oh, the guy was undefeated or, oh, the guy was a heavyweight. But I'm just saying, you pull something like that against Gerald Meerschaert. Guess what Gerald Meerschaert's known for? Gerald Meerschaert's known for taking that ass whooping up front. And if you haven't finished Gerald Meerschaert, because I know Gerald's been finished a lot for sure, but if you don't go out there and finish Gerald and you empty the clip on him and he's still there, pobrecito, my man, because Gerald Meerschaert, not only does he have the most submissions in UFC middleweight history, and I'm talking about, when I talk about in middleweight history, y'all know Damian Maia fought out middleweight. Y'all know Anderson Silva fought out middleweight. Royce Gracie, I think they called it middleweight, but it was like a lower weight. I don't remember. I don't want to speak out of turn, but like he's got more subs than Royce Gracie too. I'm just saying, this guy has the most submissions in UFC middleweight history. But submitting a guy like Reiner de Ridder, who's never been submitted, that would be a statement in itself. It's just that I need to see how this guy Reiner is going to look in the UFC, considering he hasn't fought at 185 since 2019, considering he had an ultimate quit job 2 fights ago, and the fight prior, he got knocked the fuck out. And then there's the pressure of that UFC debut. You're taking on a guy who's so experienced, who's been there with everybody, the ups, the downs, picks himself back up consistently. And now, physically speaking, I think Gerald Meerschaert's looking. He's been on a new strength and conditioning program, maybe a new supplement plan, because my boy's looking big. And don't sleep on his stand up either. Like, it might be slow and stuff, but Gerald Meerschaert's got some very heavy kicks, and his timing is kind of awkward. So he'll catch you with his punches too, man. So yeah, it's either going to be Reiner de Ridder comes out here and just takes him down, subs him, knocks him out, whatever, like gets him out early. But I'm telling you, you get me to that second or third round, Gerald, and it might be time to extend that record for most submissions in UFC middleweight history. So respect to Reiner de Ridder. You paid your dues outside the UFC. You deserve this opportunity. But if I'm going to bet this fight, I'm taking the dog because show me you're that guy, Reiner. Show me you're that guy. But until I see that, and I'm not talking about, overseas where the competition is easier. And I know people are going to have an issue with that. They can say whatever they want. We know where the best fighters in the world are. So let's see you do that to Gerald Meerschaert. I'm going to go with GM3 via late finish. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Gillian Robertson. She's 14-8, taking on Luana Pinheiro, who's 11-3. But between you and me, guys, she's 10-4 because she did not beat Randa Marcos. She did not. Currently, they got it. Gillian Robertson minus 375. The comeback on Luana Pinheiro is plus 310. And one of my good friends asked me, why is this fight line so wide? I'll tell you why. It's because how we were just talking about how Gerald Meerschaert has the most subs in UFC middleweight history. I think that Gillian Robertson has the most subs in women's UFC history, not just her weight class, just in all of women's UFC history. That's what Gillian has, man. And Gillian's been working on her ground and pound too, which you love to see, man. And the thing about this girl, Luana Pinheiro, I think if you're just talking about just pure martial arts technique, her technique's not bad. Good judo throws, decent jujitsu, some kicks, some punches. Like, yeah, she's got skills. And, like if she was teaching like a fundamentals class or like a kids class, like for sure, go take the class with her. But when it comes time to fighting in the UFC's octagon, and it's not about teaching techniques, it's about showing what's in here or what's up here. For those listening at home that don't see me, I was pointing to my heart and to my mind. I do not believe that Luana Pinheiro has the toughness required to last at this level, man. I mean, just go back to that UFC debut against Randa Marcos. I mean, Aljamain Sterling literally walked so Luana Pinheiro could run. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just baffled that neither have gotten their Oscars and their Academy Award winning performances. How have they not been acknowledged for such high standards acting? I think that they gave Leo DiCaprio a run for his money, in the first Peter Yan fight and in the Randa Marcos fight, respectively. So Luana Pinheiro, yeah, Aljo walked so you could run. And we just, again, guys, it's not about, there's certain fighters that I personally recommend not talking shit to any fighters. I think that's very rude and disrespectful, especially when you're not the one in there. But the kind of fighters that amongst friends, amongst fans, that we can say certain things, certain criticisms about, Luana Pinheiro is one of them, just like Sterling. Like, okay, so let's talk about CD and Armfield last week, right? Like CD and Armfield, it's not CD's fault that the judges gave the fight to him. CD fought his balls off. CD fought like a warrior. Like, take your frustration out on the judges and just give praise to CD and to Armfield for the incredible fight they put on for our entertainment, man. You got to love true warriors like that. Those aren't the guys that you should look down upon. But when you see the acting jobs that Luana Pinheiro and Aljamain Sterling did, and one of them was for a belt, that's compromising the integrity of the sport. You can't get knocked out and they call you the winner. And that's what happened to Pinheiro and to Aljamain Sterling. So it's just, and again, it's not their fault that their opponent threw an illegal strike, of course, but it is their fault, the acting performances they put on. I mean, did you see Luana Pinheiro barely get touched and then she act like she got shot out of cannon? And Aljamain Sterling, at first, like acting like, oh, I don't know where I am. But then a couple hours later, he's like taking pictures with the belt. And then, a few days later after that, he's bragging about, it's just like, dude, I know y'all might be sick of me talking about that stuff, but I will always stand up for my beliefs and what I think is right. And that kind of shit should just not be tolerated in our sport. Okay. And also don't take what I said out of context. Just because I don't think that Sterling was a true champion doesn't mean I don't think he was the number one contender and one of the best in that weight class. Of course he was. That was never in debate. What was in debate was, that Oscar award winning performance. That's what we had the issue with. And same thing with Luana Pinheiro. So back to this fight, what I think is going to happen is Luana might be able to front run a little bit, might even hit a judo throw or two, might land some strikes. But eventually, the thing about Gillian is we talked about it in the past what Eddie Alvarez said. If Gillian can't get her takedown, she tends to break in fights. But the good news here is that she is going to get her takedown. I mean, just to put it into perspective, my friends, Michelle Watterson took down Luana Pinheiro. Angela Hill took her down and subbed her. Angela Hill subbed her. Wasn't that like Angela Hill's only sub in the UFC? Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with the girl with the most subs? And does she have the most finishes at this point? Because now with those ground and pound TKOs, I mean, I don't want to, step on Amanda Nunes' toes or anything and speak out of line, but like Gillian's got to be up there. Let me look this shit up, dude, because Gillian like is a record breaker, man, straight up. So let's see. I'm gonna tell you all right now. So yeah, I was right. So okay, I was right and wrong. I said most finishes in women's history. That's fake news, but it's most finishes in women's flyweight history. But what she does have is the most submission wins in UFC women's history. So like, yeah, this girl, it's incredible to see her progression, especially considering how one-dimensional Gillian Robertson is. I don't think her stand-up has developed at all, but why stand up when you're the Damian Maya of women's MMA? You're the I'm not the Hoist Gracie. Let's not disrespect Gina Carano, Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, and all of them. But just saying, you're the Damian Maya of women's MMA right now, and I think that that's going to show itself when she goes out here and breaks Luana Pinheiro. So yeah, my pick is Gillian Robertson. Guys, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105. Check them out at bet105.eu, an emerging sports book with some of the best odds in the market. They don't limit winners. And best of all, instant withdrawals. You don't have to jump through a million hoops to get your money. You don't got to call, your local money collector to go stalk some people, to go track these people down and get that money. You'll get the money right away. And like I said, the limits are on point. The odds are on point. The payouts are on point. The customer service is on point. And that's why you should check out Bet105. And they're supporting Half the Battle. So thank you very much, Bet105. So, check them out, bet105.eu. Let them know I sent you. And I sincerely hope you guys enjoy the betting experience that Bet105 bring to the table. So check them out, www.bet105.eu. And thanks again for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a match between Elizeu, Zaleski, Capoeira, Dos Santos. He's 24-8-1, taking on newcomer Zach Scroggin, who's 7-0. Currently, they got it. Just depends where you look, but minus 550. Zaleski to come back on Zach Scroggin plus 400. So initially, I looked into Scroggin. I saw his record and I was like, wow, this guy's never lost to anything, amateur or pro. He's 6'3". This isn't one of those guys going up from 55s to 70 and, not cutting weight. This is a dude that used to fight at 85. So this is a big boy. So I was really excited to look into the tape. But when and he trains under Trey Ogden, Marathon MMA. Those guys are on fire right now. So, I was really looking forward to look into his fights. And I know people say he's got a padded record and whatnot. I'm not debating with you that the level of competition he's fought sucks. But what I will debate with you is that when you're only 7-0, these are the guys you're supposed to be fighting. If he was like 15-0, still fighting these guys, then we'd be like, yo, this dude's got the most padded record I've ever seen in my life. But when you're only 7-0, you're supposed to be fighting these guys. And now he gets a step up in competition. But my friends, this isn't just any step up in competition. Like, do you know what happens when you're not quite ready to fight a guy like Zaleski? Why don't you ask Benoit Saint-Denis what happened when he made his UFC debut against Zaleski, and people thought he'd never come back the same. Somehow the buddy went on a win streak after that. But like, if you're not quite ready for the UFC level, or not even just the UFC level, but like borderline top 15, or he used to be top 15, borderline top 20, top 25, Zaleski's not just going to beat you. Zaleski is going to destroy you. What Zachary Scroggin brings to the table is, look, he's big, he's 6'3", he's athletic, but I don't think his striking comes natural to him at all. I think where it's really at with him is his ground game. But even that, I think, needs a lot of work. Like, he's athletic, he's big, he can take these jobbers down, submit them, do his thing. But like, he's not being pushed or tested in any of these fights. He's going the distance with guys with 500 records, basically, or losing records, and like, and yeah, nothing wrong with that. Keep developing yourself, keep getting more experience. But now you're coming in here against the guy who's seen it all, been through it all, fought the best of the best, and knows what it means to have a 7-fight win streak in the UFC. He's knocked out UFC champions like Sean Strickland. Like, yeah, and even though I do kind of think that Zaleski, of course, I mean, my boy Zaleski, what is he? Is he 38 by now? Let me double check how old Zaleski is. Is he 38? 37. He turns 38 on the 12th. So in 6 days from now, he turns 38. But I don't think that age is going to be a factor here. I think experience is going to be a factor here. And I think that Zach might go on and do some great things, but you got to pay dues. You got to be seasoned. You got to be experienced to fight a guy like Zaleski. And he simply isn't. Look, it's still MMA. Anyone can get caught. But I think the one that's getting caught here is Zach Scroggin. I'm going Elizeu Zaleski to welcome this guy to the UFC in a very rude fashion. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Mansur Abdul Malik. He's 6-0, taking on Dusko Todorovic, who's 12-4. Currently, they got it. Oh, shit. We got the spider coming down. You ready for this shit? You ready to see me kill a spider with my bare hand? You're dead, motherfucker. Currently, they got it. Mansur Abdul Malik, minus 365. The comeback on Dusko Todorovic is plus 300. Man, so I don't know if y'all remember when Dusko first got signed to the UFC. I was thinking, this is, how I pride myself on, kind of predicting the trajectories of where I think these fighters can go. Like when Jamal Hill first made his UFC debut, y'all remember how I was saying, hey, this guy can be a future champion. When Bilal was doing his thing, I said this guy could be a future champion. Now, I've been wrong about certain guys too. I said that Chito Vera was going to fight for the title and potentially be a future champion. I was half right. He did fight for the title, but nope, no future champion there. Now, here's one I was wrong on. I said that Dusko Todorovic is a future top 15 guy. Safe to say I was way off about that. I mean, look, he came into the UFC. He had knocked out Michel Pereira, who was on, he just lost to Anthony Fluffy, but prior to that was on an insane run. And one thing about Dusko, man, like at first he kind of reminded me of like a Serbian Fedor. If you watch his regionals, man, like kind of fights with his hands down, relies on his head movement a lot. It's kind of fast, but when he takes you down and he gets on top of you, Dusko has some devastating ground and pound, man. All his UFC wins are by devastating ground and pound finish. So there's one spot I don't want Mansur Abdul Malik to be in is under Dusko, because Dusko, I mean, he's devastating with his ground and pound. The issue I've had with Dusko, man, is that he leaves that chin straight up in the air and he fights with his hands down. And, that's something I hope he would have patched up. But at this point, when you've had as many fights as this man's had, and you're at this point in your career, you've had all these major surgeries, like he's not going to just change his style. Like, he's still going to come out here hands down, chin up in the air. Look, if he can take you down and get on top of you, then shit, there's a chance the fight could be over shortly after. His ground and pound is that good. But what else has he got, guys? What else has he got? I don't think much. And the thing about it is, when I was telling y'all who I think the best prospects of this season of Contender Series were, y'all know exactly who I said. I said Malcolm Wellmaker. I could have been biased, but look at how Malcolm performed. He performed like the best guy in the season. I said Mansur Abdul Malik is the guy to look out for, because this guy, Malik, he's got those African intangibles, man. I mean, and when I talk about him being a freak athlete and being gifted, I don't want that to sound like I'm discrediting his hard work or his emerging skills and technique, because obviously this guy's working his ass off. You can't just, get a six pack and some muscles and go in there and succeed in the UFC. This guy can fight his ass off too. And some of the knockouts that this guy has, man, that one ground and pound knockout on the regional scene was so brutal. This guy will pick guys up and slam them. I'm just so excited to see his career progression and look at the physical attributes for middleweight. 6'2" with the 79-inch reach. Like, you love seeing stuff like that. So all respect to Dusko. I'm a fan of his, but I think Dusko's on his way towards washing out, and they're testing Mansur Abdul Malik. He's a little bit green, but that last fight against Wes Schultz, that was the first time he had been past the first round. Now this is the first time he fight a UFC vet. So it's like he's taking those logical next steps up in competition. And I think he's going to be too much of a physical force for Dusko Todorovic. And I think at some point, whether he finds the chin, whatever the case may be, I think Mansur Abdul Malik is going to come out here Saturday night and get his first UFC win. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Charles Radtke, he's 9-4, taking on Matthew Semelsberger, who's 11-7. Currently, they got it. Charles Radtke minus 150. The comeback on Semelsberger is plus 130. This is one of the hardest fights for me to call on the entire card. Reason being is because Semelsberger has an insane knockdown rate. Like, when you count it, let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 knockdowns in his UFC career. But the big issue, my friends, in those 10 knockdowns, he only has 2 knockout wins. So one thing that I want to see Semelsberger working on is when you drop these guys, you got to be able to close the show. And it's so frustrating how he'll knock Jeremiah Wells out twice and then still lose the fight. Stuff like that. And the Uros Medic fight, man, he had him on death's doorstep in that first round, but he let Medic back into the fight, and then Medic broke him. The Parsons fight, I don't think is as relevant here because Parsons took him down 7 times, and this dude Radtke had issues taking down like Blood Diamond and stuff. So, I think Parsons is on a completely different level than Blood Diamond. Yeah, MMA math doesn't mean shit, but I'm saying if you have issues taking down a guy with 0 wrestling, not that Semelsberger has the best wrestling either. He's got 45% takedown defense. I'm just saying, I think Semelsberger's a lot better than Blood Diamond. And then also on the other hand, you could look at it as maybe somewhat of a step down in competition for Semelsberger. Maybe this could be a get right spot, but I just don't trust Semi the Jedi anymore. Not because of the skills. Look, he's a big welterweight. He's got 10 knockdowns in the UFC. He has been improving, but it's something up here mentally that I don't know. It's like he'll have a good moment, then he'll let these guys ease back into the fights. Like even the Jake Matthews fight was like super close. The way he'd separate himself was with those knockdowns. So yeah, and then with Radtke, I don't think Radtke's anything special. Radtke does have some nice knockouts on his record outside the UFC, and he does seem like a confident guy. Trains with Bilal Muhammad. That can only help you out. I want to pick Semelsberger here because I do think that right now he's further along. He's more battle tested. I'm just super worried about where he's at mentally. I feel like he's at the point where he could potentially he's already been pulling stunts, but he can pull more stunts now against guys that are lesser qualified than the guys that he's been losing to. So, but all that being said, Semelsberger wasn't a plus 130 dog in all those fights. Let's look at what number he was in all those fights. Against Preston, it was like a pick 'em. Against Uros Medic, minus 205. Against Jeremiah Wells, pick 'em. So the last time he was a dog was against Jake Matthews at plus 260, and that's the last time he was a dog he won. He's a dog here against Charles Radtke. Listen, I wouldn't go big on it because there's a lot, how many times are you going to let Semelsberger let you down? But I think that Radtke's super green too. I think Radtke's figuring things out too. I'm not comfortable laying a price like that on Radtke. So I'm going to reluctantly take Semi the Jedi, Matthew Semelsberger here to get back on track. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Cody Stamann. He's 21-7-1, taking on Damon Blackshear, who's 14-7-1. Currently, they got it. Damon Blackshear minus 275. The comeback on Cody Stamann is plus 235. 275. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that price, but let's talk about it. So the thing about this guy Blackshear, right? He had never been finished until his last fight. Finally got finished. You know, you do this long enough, you will get finished. He got starched badly. He's got a lot of losses on his record, and some of them to not the best competition. I mean, do y'all remember Chris Moutinho, the green haired punching bag that fought O'Malley and then got knocked out by Guido Canetti? Yeah, that guy has a win over Damon Blackshear. Granted, it was a while ago, but I'm just saying that's not the only jobber that beat Damon. What about Keith Richardson? But we can fast forward to the UFC talk because obviously the guy leveled up big time. Damon's got some very good physical attributes. He can grapple his ass off. The striking, I think, needs a lot of work. It's gotten better, but it's kind of like that Aljamain Sterling type striking where it'll never come natural, but he can like spam volume and front kicks and use his athleticism stuff, but it's not something you'd ever want to show like a boxing or kickboxing coach. But like I said, where it's really at with Damon is on the mat. The thing about it is Stamann's not exactly the easiest guy to take down. Throughout a long UFC career, his takedown defense is over 75%. And historically speaking, Stamann can compete competitively with almost everyone he fights, man. The only thing about Stamann that I have an issue with is that I truly do believe he's plateaued. Not that he's declined, just that he's plateaued. Like, he's the exact same Stamann now that he was a few years ago. And he might disagree with that. Maybe in the gym, he's performing better. He's adding new skills. But I'm saying when he gets out there and fights, it's still the same Stamann. And I heard an interview with him talking about how, like, when I'm in the gym, I can take these guys down whenever I want. But when I get out there, for some reason, I decide not to shoot takedowns. And so that tells me that there's a lot of mental things going on. Then I heard that interview, and he also talked about how, like, life after fighting, which is very smart. Of course, address life after fighting, but he's thinking about retirement. He knows he's kind of at the end here. And it's not like he's going out in unceremonious fashion in terms of like, he's not getting starched left and right. It's nothing like that. It's just that he used to compete at super thin margins and he just never evolved. But that being said, I think that people have an idea of who Blackshear is, of someone that who he actually isn't. Don't get me wrong, very skilled guy, experienced, athletic, lots of great things. But I think people think that he's like a knockout artist and like some overwhelming force. I think he's just a tough, gritty vet. And that's what I think both these guys are. The thing going on in this fight is that Blackshear, he's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage, a 4-inch height advantage. And I think that he slightly has more aspirations in terms of what he wants to accomplish in the UFC. Like, if you cut both of them today, I think Cody Stamann will go on, retire, go work on his farm. Hey, I had a great run. Whereas Blackshear is still at that point where it's like, if he gets cut, he'll go back to the regional scene, win a couple fights, and come right back. So I still think there's a little bit more left in the tank for Blackshear, so I'm going to pick him for that reason. But I would not at all be surprised if this was a very close fight, because Stamann has a way of neutralizing guys and making you fight at his pace. He doesn't take too many unnecessary risks, and he doesn't leave too many openings. So I could see this fight being closer than the line indicates for sure. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Melissa Mullins. She's 6-1. Welcoming the newcomer Klaudia Sigula, who's also 6-1 to the UFC. Currently, they got it Melissa Mullins or Melissa Dixon minus 250. The comeback on Klaudia Sigula plus 210. Yeah, see, that's another one where I'm not quite sure about the price. Like, I get it. Klaudia is making her UFC debut, and she's been fighting on her regional scene. She hasn't really fought much on her regional scene either. But there's certain things I've liked that I've seen. I like the fact that, like, she reminds me of like a young green Karolina Kowalkiewicz, man. Like, she's got that enthusiasm about her and the way that she strikes, she goes forward. But where the issues are, especially here, is what happens if she gets taken down. That is the big question here, because Melissa Mullins, well, I will to the newcomer's credit, Melissa Mullins has only landed one takedown in 2 UFC fights, so it's not like she's exactly the strongest grappler you've ever seen. And when you look at the people that she's been beating, Melissa Mullins, like, y'all saw that Daria Zalesnikova fight. Oh, that's a UFC fighter. She was 7-0 at the time. Guys, do you see what's happening to Daria in the UFC? She's getting twerked on and stuff, in the first round. And then the Nora Cornoli fight, Mullins, misses weight by a mile and goes down to body shots. I'm just not sold. Whereas with Klaudia, yes, there's a lot of things she needs to patch up in her game, the ground game specifically. But man, I think that, since her last fight, she's had, well, her last official MMA fight, because I know she had that custom rules fight, but since her last real MMA fight, it's been over a year. That's plenty of time to patch up certain things in your game. And I do think she's the meaner girl here. So I think as long as she can avoid getting grinded out, getting submitted, getting held down, stuff like that, I think she might be a live dog here. So I'm not that confident, but I'm gonna go with the newcomer, Claudio Segula, here to come out here and upset Melissa Mullins. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Cortavius Romius. He's 9-2, taking on Gaston Bolaños, who's 7-4. Currently, they got it. Cortavius Romius minus 215. The comeback on Gaston Bolaños is plus 185. Yeah, this is another tough one because Gaston Bolaños, he had this reputation of being this devastating Muay Thai guy and kickboxer. And I remember he was on Joe Rogan a few times back in the day, but like when I watched his MMA fights, I never really saw it. It's like he hasn't been able to transition from that kickboxing background. Don't get me wrong. There's been some things here and there I like for example, that Aaron Phillips fight. I know it's Aaron Phillips, but like he got his back taken by a black belt, didn't get tapped out. Certain things I liked about that. And, and he likes to swing. He likes to kick hard, but I think he's a bit on the slower side actually with his striking. Despite it being more technical, than his opponent Cortavius, I think he's on the way slower side. And then there's a big issue with Bolaños on the mat. And then as far as Cortavius Romius, he's like a piece of clay, a piece of very high quality clay, but you need to mold it into something great. And it hasn't been molded yet. So his last fight against Imperator was in August. How much improvements have you made since then? Because the thing about Romius, like I said, when you just talk about athleticism, and again, when I mention stuff like that, I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm discrediting his hard work. I'm not. I'm just saying that this is a very gifted athlete here in Cortavius Romius, and I'm very familiar with him. He fought one of my friends, Nate Williams, a retired fighter now, who is a friend of mine, and shout out Nate Williams. I love that guy, but Nate took him down and Cortavius armbarred him off his back, and Cortavius has done that to a lot of people. And the thing about it is Gaston's probably not going to take him down, so they're going to have to swing a bit. And in that situation, you'd think on paper the more seasoned kickboxer would be the side here, and maybe he is, but like for being like the credentialed kickboxer that he is, he's kind of like on the slower side. And I've seen him get dropped by not the best guy. I'm not talking about Marcus McGee. He's a stud. I'm talking about prior to the UFC, like jobbers were finishing this guy. And with Romius, again, look, the Tavares fight, I don't put any stock into it. Tavares just beat the shit out of Ceedy. You know what I'm saying? I think that was just a bad matchup for Cortavius, just someone he wasn't ready for at the time. Whereas Bolaños, even though Bolaños is a little bit older, he's 32. He's not that old, but I'm just saying he's like had a long career. He's still not fully developed in MMA, and either is Cortavius. So this is good. Two guys that one's green as hell on Cortavius, and one's just not that good. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not going to lay this price on Cortavius because let's talk about Cortavius' skill set. I think the best weapons in his game are actually on the mat. And it's not even his takedown ability. He doesn't take too many. In amateurs, he took a lot of guys down, but in pro, he doesn't take too many guys down. It's when he gets taken down, that fucking armbar is disgusting. Like you don't see dudes with arm bars off their back, but I think it's his body type that allows it to happen. So I think on the feet, it's going to be very interesting. I think that Cortavius is going to have more power, more athleticism, more speed. Gaston, more technical, a little more slower and methodical. I don't blame people for taking the shot on the dog because, again, Cortavius has to prove it. He's got to prove it. But Gaston, I wanted to make the case for him, but when I watched the tape, I just don't see him being in the UFC this time next year. So I'm going to go Cortavius Romius to win his UFC debut. Now, last but not least, in the middleweight division, we got Tresean Gore. He's 4-2, taking on Antonio Tricoli, who's 12-4. Currently, they got it Tresean minus 160. The comeback on Antonio is plus 140. So I'm very familiar with both these guys because actually I watched both of them fight in the NFC. I called Tresean Gore's pro debut and his sophomore appearance as a pro. So yeah, I've seen this guy since day one. And then Antonio Tricoli, I saw him fight Diego Lima at like 170 pounds. This was like 6'5". He fought Diego Lima at 170 pounds. And Tricoli, it's like he's got all these physical attributes, but he like just doesn't do anything. It's I'm not convinced Tricoli's ready for this level. And then with Tresean, he's super green, but man, he's got athletic gifts and he's got one hitter quitter. He can wrestle. There's a lot to like about Tresean. The issue I have with Tresean, and I say this from I say this from a place of respect, but like I just say this from a place of honesty because I want to be honest about all this stuff. When I talk about my guys, my Georgia guys, and I think Tresean, he doesn't even claim Georgia. I think he claims South Carolina. But like I said, I called his pro debut in a second fight in the NFC. But when I think about like the guys that I've told you about before they were even in the UFC, right? The Cody Durdens, the Jared Goodens, the Malcolm Wellmakers. Those three guys, Cody, Jared, and Malcolm, have something in common that Tresean doesn't have. And what that is that Cody Durden, Jared Gooden, Malcolm Wellmaker, I'm not talking about if their skill sets are similar. I'm not, yeah, they're obviously not. I mean, Cody Durden's a top 15 guy. I don't know, But what I am saying is Cody Durden, Jared Gooden, and Malcolm Wellmaker are anyone, anytime, any place guys. Tresean Gore is simply not that guy. My proof, go pull up his Tapology page. This guy has more fight pullouts than he has actual fights. And it's unfortunate because he's obviously got a lot of potential. He's obviously an athletic freak. Obviously, he's talented and skilled, but I think he might be a bit of a head case. Like he got that 50K bonus against Fremd, and then we never heard from him ever again. And that was in October of 2022, guys. It's about to be 2025, my friends. Like, and then he goes from ATT in Atlanta to Fortis MMA to now he's at the lab. Like, yeah, I like Trey. I don't know Trey like I know Cody and Jared and Malcolm. Like, like I told you, I've been to Cody Durden's house. Jared Gooden's been to my house. I could call up Malcolm Wellmaker on the phone right now. I don't know Tresean Gore like that. Yeah, I've shook his hand a couple of times, interaction here and there, pleasant. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Go our separate ways. But, we're not friends. We're not enemies. We just don't know each other. You know what I'm saying? We're just cordial. I've met him a couple of times. But yeah, I just have an issue with, well, it's not that I have an issue with it. It's worrisome laying chalk prices when this guy's a big time head case, might not even show up to the fight. But then on the other side with Tricoli, he's just not very good, guys. He's just not very good. Like he's at an athletic disadvantage here against Tresean, and Trey already showed that he could beat guys this height. This guy's 6'5". Josh Fremd was 6'5". And Trey had him in a ridiculous choke. And it even seemed like Josh was starting to take over that fight. And then Trey turned things around. But then you got to be like, well, Trey got knocked out by Cody Brundage. But like, he came into the UFC at only like, what, 3-0 or something like that. So it's like he has to pay his dues on the job. And I want him to do that. But like, how can you do that when you fight once every 3 years? So yeah, like I think who's got more potential, who's the better athlete, who's got better skills? Tresean Gore. But that doesn't always matter. And he is a liability for a stunt. And if he pulls a stunt here, I am not going to be surprised if Tricoli taps him out or something. But I think Tricoli's got a lot of his own issues too. And especially for a guy that's had 16 pro fights and he still hasn't really evolved how I want to see him evolve. Like I think when Tresean gets to 16 pro fights, if he does, he can be a future top 15 guy. The reason that I'm not predicting he'll become one is because you got to actually fight for that to happen, and he barely fights. So yeah, it's just tough. But I'll go Trayshawn. But you know, do I sound confident? Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Vegas 100? My friends, I think the fight to watch is Gerald Meerschaert versus Reiner de Ridder. You got the guy with the most submissions in UFC middleweight history, Gerald Meerschaert, more than Anderson Silva, more than Damian Maia, more than Royce Gracie, taking on Reiner de Ridder, who's coming from overseas, making his UFC debut. But this guy's coming in here with a serious 17-2 record, 12 submissions on his record, 3 knockouts. He's dropping to 185 for the first time since 2019. And if there's any kind of questions about your stamina late in fights or how that weight cut went for the first time in however many years it's been, Gerald's the kind of guy to expose that. But Reiner is also a very fast starter, and he's known for getting a lot of quick finishes. So for that reason, Gerald Meerschaert versus Reiner de Ridder is my fight to watch. Who's my fighter to watch? My fighter to watch is Mansur Abdul Malik. I told y'all, if you go back to my Contender Series breakdown of his fight, this is one of the guys to watch on that season. He destroyed his opponent, and now it's time to come in here against a battle-tested vet in Dusko Todorovic. And let's see what you do with your UFC debut. All eyes, or at least all my 2 eyes, will be on Mansur Abdul Malik this weekend. And let's see what he does with this big opportunity. So, my friends, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this very special edition of Half the Battle. I sincerely appreciate it. Y'all can follow me on Twitter, on X at Best Fight Picks, at Half the Battle HQ. You can follow me on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod, on TikTok at Half the Battle Podcast. Thank you so much to the fans. Smash the like, hit the subscribe, leave me a comment, share. Shout out to my dog Meticulous for the incredible thumbnails, artwork, the shorts, the reels, the friendship, everything. And to the fans, thank you again. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.